Newsmaker Sunday with Fox 10's John Hook.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Sunday. He was a television icon, Bob Crane. You knew him as Colonel Robert Hogan on the hit show Hogan's Heroes during the 60s and 70s, ran from 1965 to 1971. Bob Crane was, I think you could say safely, a comedic genius, a tremendous talent on radio in New York, Connecticut, later KNX, the huge monster station in Los Angeles. A morning personality, really became known as the king of the LA airwaves, who unfortunately met his fate in Scottsdale while playing dinner theater here after Hogan's had ended in the summer of 1978. This was Bob Crane as he was wheeled out of his apartment after he was savagely murdered on June 29th of 1978. His son, Robert Jr., is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday. Great to see you, Bob.
Great to be here.
We have struck up a fast friendship through the story that I worked on through much of the last 2 years on trying to uncover new evidence in Bob's father's murder. And Bob Crane Jr. is our guest on Newsmaker Sunday and has his own book, which has been out now 2 years.
2 years.
Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder.
Yep. Now available in paperback.
There you go. Yes.
Hardcover.
By the way, for people who don't know, your history as a writer, I mean, you have done a lot of stuff. It started, writing for Playboy was one of the early things, but one of the first interviews you landed was Jack Nicholson, maybe at the zenith of his career.
Yeah.
When you interviewed Jack Nicholson, what year was that?
First time, 1972. So Nicholson was coming off of Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, Carnal Knowledge, and he was about to do Chinatown.
Wow.
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And we, Chris Fryer, my partner on this project, and I were 2 punks going to USC Film School, and we got his phone number through devious means and called him, and he answered his phone.
He answered it at his home?
Yeah. And we said, we're 2 college students, and we want to do a paper on you. He said, okay, come on up.
I was going to ask you to do it.
And we went up to his house.
Because in the book, you talk about how you can't get together with Chris without somebody imitating Nicholson.
Yeah.
To this day.
To this day, yeah.
Your dad had a term for these moments in life. What was that term?
Fellini excursions. Federico Fellini, the great Italian filmmaker, made some crazy, bizarre films. And my dad and I saw a few of them together, and we look at each other, and this term just came up because he would take me on strange events. We went to a bocce tournament at Caesar's Caesar's Palace, or Caesar's Salad, in Las Vegas, a celebrity bocce tournament. And we're looking at each other going, what the hell? And Joe DiMaggio is there. I get to meet Joe DiMaggio. This is the early 70s. And Joe is really ticked off. I mean, he's an angry guy. He doesn't want to be there. They're paying him whatever to be there. And he was just so sour. But I got to meet Joe DiMaggio.
This was the benefit of growing up Crane.
Yes. Yeah.
So with your father's celebrity, and we've talked about this before, that was a double-edged sword.
It was, yeah.
What was the good part?
The good part, well, getting to meet people like that. Willie, my dad was filming when he did Donna Reed. He was on Donna Reed's show for 2 years. And they had one episode where they're playing a baseball game at a public park. Don Drysdale and Willie Mays and Leo DeRoche are guest stars. So naturally, my dad tells me, hey, guess who's going to be there? I go down there, I'm 13 years old. I have a great photo of me with these 3 legends.
Wow.
I got to meet them.
So growing up that way, does that become your normal, or do you still kind of go pinch yourself when you're a kid and say, this is really the cool part of my dad's job?
Yeah, I'm pinching myself all the time, and I get to meet, you know, Vic Morrow from Combat.
Right.
I love Combat.
Right.
But then my mom is the rock of the family. She's the small town Connecticut woman, and she's going, whoa, 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 come settle down, everybody. That's your dad's job. You know, it's not like this all the time. And because we didn't live in Beverly Hills, we lived in what the TV Guide called unfashionable Tarzana, out in the San Fernando Valley. You know, a nice house, but it was no mansion or anything. And
you and your dad right here.
Yeah.
This is toward the end of your dad's life, right?
Yes.
This would have been, what year do you think this was?
This is the...
Maybe 72, 73,
Yeah.
or even later?
Yeah, I was going
Look
to
at
say...
him on the radio. That was in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
Or was that at the station in Hornell, New York?
This is, yeah, WLEA. I think that is Hornell.
So he gets on the radio in New York, and New York folks in New York, I'm not talking about New York State, in New York City,
Yeah.
we're like, we've got to get this guy out of here because he's siphoning our audience away. That's how he ends up in L.A., right?
Yeah, yeah, because it's bleeding in from Bridgeport, Connecticut to, you know, people are picking up the show in New York, and they have their people set. I mean, Arthur Godfrey and big stars of the day are on the CBS station there. But they have an opening in the Los Angeles station at KNX that you mentioned, and send his tape out to Bob Sutton, the station manager out there, loves it. Ralph Story, the former morning host, is going to go off and do television. So they bring my dad out in 1956.
There you go.
We loaded up the truck and we drove
Moved
to Beverly.
Yeah, except it was Tarzana. Did he know when he moved out there he wanted to start to move into film and television?
Yes.
Was that part of the plan all along?
I think so. Yeah, his heroes were Jack Lemmon, Gig Young, you know, the light comedians. In the case of Gig Young and Jack Lemmon, who could also do great drama.
We've got 30 seconds in this segment. We talked about the good side of growing up Crane.
Right.
What was the bad side?
Bad side is bad to the family, going to a restaurant and walking in and Hogan, hey, Hogan's there, you know.
You can't have a moment with your dad.
People queuing up for an autograph. To my dad, though, that's a show of recognition. That means people are watching the show. So he's okay with it. It's the kids and my mom who are like going, oh, God.
So you get tired of it after a while.
Yeah.
But to him, those were his customers.
He loved it, exactly.
And he served the customer.
Yeah.
We're going to talk more with Robert Crane Jr., his book, Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder. We have a great conversation ahead. Hope you stick with us on Newsmaker Sunday. Bob Crane Jr. is our guest this week on Newsmaker Sunday, the son of famed Hogan's Heroes star Bob Crane, who, as you all know, was found murdered in Scottsdale in 1978. His murder still technically unsolved. This is how Bob and I met. As I was working on my story on his father's unsolved murder, that's where Bob and I met, and that's how we struck up a friendship over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the greatest things that came of all of this.
And then you put together this great book, Who Killed Bob Crane, which totally tore open this almost dead case, no pun intended, after 40 years, and came out with some new information.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that later because I want to get your take on a couple of things. Your book, Crane, Sex, Celebrity, My Father's Unsolved Murder. You talk about the murder. The murder is woven through the book.
Yes.
You go from chapter, a little bit of the case, chapter of your life, a little bit of the case, you weave it through.
Yeah.
People would say, and I may have said years ago, this was the defining moment in your life. I think that is true, but there were other defining moments. Working with John Candy.
Oh.
Tell me about John Candy, the amazing comedic actor who came out of SCTV in Canada.
Yeah.
Tell me how you met him.
Well, you mentioned Playboy earlier. I pitched Playboy on an SCTV interview in 1981. At that time, SCTV was on NBC Friday nights after Johnny Carson. So it was on at 12:30.
Right.
So the diehard people stayed up to watch
They
SCTV.
found it. Yeah.
Playboy said, yeah, go ahead. They were shooting the show in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, of all places. And I flew up there. I spent a week with them. I interviewed John, everybody in the cast. Somehow, because I never do this, it was found out that my dad was Hogan. I don't announce these things.
Right.
But they knew it. So all of a sudden, that Celebrity Door, that club that I talk about in the book.
You did talk about it, yes.
The door opens, and they go, okay, he's okay.
one of us.
Yeah. He's been around it. He's okay. He's one of us. So they're letting me in on meetings, you know, story meetings, attorneys, producers. I'm just sitting there watching this and being accepted by Candy and Rick Moranis and all these people. And I later worked for John Candy.
For how many years was that total?
I worked for John for about 6 years.
But you were no stranger, as you said, to show business. You also were on the set of Hogan's toward the end.
Absolutely.
When you hit 18, you were of age, and they let you be an extra in the show.
Yeah, nice summer job. Nice summer job.
Tell me what that set was like, because you look at it and you think you're in the tundra, the frozen tundra of Germany in a POW camp, but you're out there in the California sunshine.
Yeah,
you guys pulled it off.
The exterior of Stalag 13 was in Culver City in California. It's about 10 miles from the beach, but it gets warm because it's inland.
Right.
So they're shooting in summer, and you know the poor guys who are playing Germans have the big wool coats on, and there's snow all over, but it's salt. It's
That's
salt
what they
poured
use.
all over. Yeah,
Okay.
it looks like snow. It looks great. And so I was a POW because I was technically old enough to be one. So I'm in some shots, you know, where Hogan is launching the next plan. I'll see myself on a bunk, you know, listening to Hogan.
You still see this in rerun?
Yeah, yeah.
That's got to be a kick.
Yeah, I got my little check, but the main thing is I'm hanging out with these guys, you know, during the summer.
You're hanging out with your dad.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted it. He wanted you to hang out with him.
Yeah. I was on the cover of the only album he ever did.
Right.
He did a drumming album, which sold about 3 copies, but it was on Epic Records, and they wanted a shot of, you know, they wanted Klink in there, and Schultz and Hilda, and my dad, and a drum set in the middle of the camp. So the way it was framed, they didn't want to frame it right in the center. They wanted it off a little bit, so they needed something on the left side. So they said, let's put in a guard. Bobby, I go over to wardrobe, I put on a German uniform with a rubber machine gun, and I'm, you know, fiercely looking at the group, and I'm on the album cover.
One of the other benefits of being Crane.
Yeah.
Do you think in the end, and we'll get into this in the next segment, your father's murder, do you think celebrity in the end killed your father?
I think bad decision making on my dad's part. He didn't trust himself. I think ultimately, and 2 of the bad decisions were his so-called friend John Carpenter, the Sony salesperson,
video salesperson, who introduced him to that technology.
Yes,
who was ultimately charged with the crime.
Charged with the crime, went to trial and acquitted, and my dad's second wife, Patty, who was the secretary on Hogan's. I think those were 2 bad choices of people in your life.
We're going to take a break. When we come back with Robert Crane Jr., we're going to talk about his father's murder, the case, and my efforts to try to get new answers in the past couple of years, particularly retesting the DNA from the original crime. Back in a minute on Newsmaker Sunday. Back on Newsmaker Sunday with Robert Crane Jr., the son of famed Hogan's Heroes actor Bob Crane. You don't like being called Junior, right?
No, well, you know, technically, I'm not. I didn't have the same middle name as my dad.
Oh, true. Everybody calls you Robert Crane Jr. or Bob Crane Jr.
I know. It just falls into that.
You're Robert Edward Crane.
Robert David.
Robert David Crane.
He was Robert Edward.
Yes, that's right.
And you saw on his jacket, on the Hogan jacket, R.E. Hogan.
Right.
So that was Robert Edward.
That jacket you sold at Christie's auction house long after your father's death.
We did.
And that was a really poignant moment in your book, Crane, Sex, Celebrity, and My Father's Unsolved Murder. That was a bidding adieu to that chapter in your life, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You know, the jacket was first worn by Frank Sinatra in Von Ryan's Express.
Wow.
When my dad got the jacket for Hogan's, he looks in the label, you know, the Western costume, F. Sinatra. He goes, oh, God. Tries it on, fits perfectly. He wears it for 6 years. Then he's killed. We take possession of it. Hangs in my mom's closet for years. You know, we take it out occasionally. And then Autofocus comes along in 2002. Greg Kinnear played my dad, and we gave the jacket to him.
He was really moved by that gesture, too, wasn't he?
Fit him perfectly.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. We're going to go back to your father's murder, and I know this is a tough subject, but as I came to get to know you, you have lived this and breathed this for so long that the images now are kind of like white noise to you. You don't seem to react to them when you see them.
Yeah. I have to be honest, though, in your special last year where you revealed DNA, there were some images I had never seen before.
Yes, we did get access to that.
Jaw-dropping.
We're going to show one of the pieces that kind of condenses the investigation that I took on after meeting you first 2 years ago, talking about your book that led me on this odyssey to try to learn new answers about what happened to your father. Take a look.
The mystery behind Bob Crane's murder still haunts family and friends.
It's one of those cases that, of all the murder cases in the Valley, this is the one that keeps coming back.
For 5 decades, Bob Crane has been a constant presence in our lives. The wisecracking Colonel Hogan adored by millions. And his unsolved murder continues to fascinate.
I've read about all this stuff. It's weird to finally touch it.
The physical evidence in the case still preserved in these 11 boxes in the Maricopa County Attorney's Office.
Bob Crane's blood.
It is.
Taken at his autopsy.
It was on June 30th, 1978.
Still in liquid form.
Yeah, appears to be. Yes, it is.
We will retest the DNA contained in these vials and try to unlock the mystery of who killed Bob Crane. We will send the DNA to one of the top labs in the nation.
This all-American image of him, of my dad as Colonel Hogan, has the dark side. Colonel Hogan isn't who we thought he was.
John Carpenter, a home video salesman from Los Angeles, met Crane on the set of Hogan's and introduced him to this new technology. Carpenter often met up with Crane out on the road. The two would pick up women and videotape their sexual exploits.
It became kind of a hobby that went too far. I think their friendship really revolved around electronics and women.
Weeks before his death, Crane told his son he was tired of Carpenter hanging around.
John Carpenter's a pain in the ass. I'm making changes.
Police believe Crane was severing his relationship with Carpenter, and Carpenter was angry.
In the early morning hours of June 29th, 1978, while Bob Crane was asleep inside the Winfield Apartments, someone entered his bedroom and bludgeoned him to death.
This never-before-seen video taken by Scottsdale police inside Crane's apartment as a medical examiner shaves Crane's battered head for a closer look at the fatal wound.
Well, we got 2 blows here. They're very different from 2 blows on this one.
An electrical cord cut from a video camera was found tied around Crane's neck. There was no sign of forced entry.
My theory is that Crane let him in the apartment.
There was no sign of a struggle. Suspicions quickly turned to John Carpenter.
Thursday, June 29th, the day Bob Crane is murdered. John leaves 10 a.m. The plan was for him to take Carpenter to the airport. That was the plan.
Police find 7 bloodstains on the inside passenger door of John Carpenter's rental car. The car was immediately impounded by DPS, processed and photographed. The blood collected to determine blood type.
How did that blood sample get on Carpenter's door if it's not my dad's blood? Naturally, who is it? How did it get there?
38 years later, can DNA science finally identify who killed Bob Crane?
The blood on my car, which, like I said, I didn't know where that came from, and I don't know how much there was. Then when you said to me, you know, why did I kill Bob Crane? Well, I told you off the start I didn't, and I would never do that.
This is the actually tube from Carpenter's blood.
That is John Carpenter's blood.
It is.
Taken when?
On 7/2 of 1978.
Still liquid.
It is.
14 years would pass before he was finally charged with the crime. Hidden from public view for 22 years, these are the original sections of the passenger door of John Carpenter's rental car. The missing pieces are where the blood was found. The cutouts were tested 4 separate times in the late 80s and early 90s for DNA.
None of them were able to conclusively say that it was Bob Crane's blood.
Without a DNA match, the jury found Carpenter
not guilty of murder in the first degree. Signed, foreperson, Michael E. Lake.
But they wanted the DNA. I mean, that's, in the end, we didn't have sufficient evidence to be able to get a guilty verdict.
If it's not your dad's blood, if it's type B from somebody else, then cops maybe spent 3 decades looking at the wrong guy.
I know. Oh my God. Yeah, that would be, that'd be like an earthquake to me.
22 years later, we have retested those same samples from Carpenter's car at Bodie Cellmark Forensics using the latest DNA science, and this time around, we got a result. we got a result. And tonight, for the first time, we are revealing those results to the world. The DNA found on the door of John Carpenter's rental car is not from Bob Crane. The tests actually picked up 2 DNA profiles. A major contributor is from a man. His identity is unknown. Second DNA profile is a partial profile, too degraded to reach any conclusions.
I'm shocked right now. There were always 2 people in my mind, John Carpenter or my stepmother, for different reasons. But it was on John's car.
I think we're all frankly stunned. Back with Robert Crane Jr., my guest on Newsmaker Sunday. That moment when that happened, what did you think? Because we had waited and I had hoped to provide closure. Well, I know you hate that word. Let's say resolution to your family that would have said, your dad's blood in Carpenter's car, case closed. That's what I set out to do. It didn't come back that way.
No. I think I was shocked by 2
profiles.
2 profiles. I was like, that was jaw-dropping.
Have you, in the intervening months, have you thought about this and what it means, those findings? Because it still troubles me that we didn't find your dad's DNA somewhere in that sample. You would think that it would be there.
I don't think it's over. I really don't. The door is still open, you know, and this may go on until the last member of my family, you know, is alive to see this out.
But I sense now that you have moved on, even though you don't have an answer, which you desperately wanted for 38 years. It's not killing you anymore. You've somehow let that go. Am I right?
You have to let it go. You've got to, you have to move forward. You have to keep moving. My wife, Leslie, you know, says, keep going, keep going, keep going. Look ahead. You know, your dad is gone. You're not going to bring him back, because for a while I thought I was going to solve the case. You know, I thought I was Columbo.
So did I.
Yeah.
I went down that rabbit hole as well.
And on my part, it's not going to happen. But I welcome any new news like you presented last year, and we'll just keep going and living our lives.
Bob was kind enough to write the foreword for my book, Who Killed Bob Crane? And that was the highest honor I could have ever asked for, that you would write the foreword.
Well, it was my pleasure.
You were glad we did this, and I should tell folks at home that when this came to my mind of, can we maybe retest the evidence? Because in 1994, when John Carpenter went on trial, DNA was in its infancy. There was no result. It was inconclusive. My thought was, DNA's come so far, maybe in 2017 we'll get a different result. That's when I called you. You were the first call I made. Do you remember that phone call?
I do. I do.
Were you stunned?
I was stunned, yeah.
And I was stunned because I was fully expecting you to say, they've already tried this. It's never been, it's already been done, John.
Yeah. No, I welcomed a new attempt, and you went into it and tore everything apart, basically, and dumped boxes over and took a new look at it. And I welcomed that anything, just one iota of info, new info would come out, you know.
So in your mind, who killed Bob Crane?
Well, it's always going to get down to 2 people for me. I don't think it's a break-in. I don't think it's a jealous husband or boyfriend. The place wasn't tossed.
No mob hit.
No mob hit. It's 2 people. It will forever be means and opportunity. John Carpenter, he was there. Motive, my stepmom. Money. She was in the middle of a divorce with my dad.
Could they have worked together on this? Is that possible? Is that at all possible?
It's possible. I never really knew them to be close.
Right. That's my finding as well.
So
let's always be in touch.
Yes.
Okay. And I think we will.
This goes on.
I agree.
It's not over.
I agree. Robert Crane. We'll forget the junior. We'll just drop that. Robert Crane, my guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Thank you for all your help on
this.
Thanks,
John. Thank you.
We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Sunday.